Hello everyone, this is a Donaron Monologue podcast. I am your host, Beau, and today, as always, we will be discussing the viability and importance of video games as an artistic medium, and also that they're just wicked cool. And right now, you're probably seeing a lot in the news about nurses and what nurses go through and what a nurse does. Obviously, we're going through a time when nurses are very much needed. And if you're interested in learning more about nursing, achieving a higher education there, insight into what a life is like as a nurse, then we strongly suggest you check out Ashley Luann K on YouTube. You can find a link to her channel at rallynetwork.net or by searching Ashley Luann K on YouTube. So Final Fantasy's obviously been on my mind a lot, and I've come to the realization that there's not much more in this context until I've beaten it that I can talk to you about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because any part of the game I just sort of dissect and compartmentalize, which that's what I've been trying to do for the sections that I've completed for the past hour. I've been trying to cut a podcast about that, and that's not really going to work. It's probably best at this point in that game just to get through it. So while I'm getting through it, because I feel very strongly that game deserves the best television in the house, and that television's not always available since we're all stuck in the same house 24 hours a day now. I kind of have to share the wealth on there, so I can't always get to that, and I will not play it on the I will not switch the Xbox One to the PlayStation 4 out of the living room and bedroom. The Xbox One's staying in the bedroom because it does not have Final Fantasy VII Remake, so we can stay on that inferior TV. Still a fine TV, just not worthy of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, but I can still talk about Final Fantasy. And probably the game I anticipated the most my whole life, because as I told you on my memories of the Final Fantasy VII original, I just sort of came across that game on accident. But the game I most hotly anticipated in my life when I was a kid was Final Fantasy VIII. The demo for it came out with Brave Fencer Musashi, another Squaresoft game in the 90s that I bought simply because I spent allowance on it simply because it had the Final Fantasy VIII demo, and it was a fine game in itself, Brave Fencer Musashi. Tetsuya Nomura did the character design on it, had a really fun, quirky little campy, cartoony story, cute little graphics, and very addictive gameplay. It was fine. I already had a day-night cycle in the town that blew my mind, but it was more of like an action RPG thing, heavy on the action, light on the RPG. But more importantly, it had a demo for Final Fantasy VIII, and man, it was gorgeous. And I could not wait to play the game. I really couldn't. And so finally, September 9th, 1999 came around. September 9th, 1999, I believe, unless I'm totally mistaken, was also the Sega Dreamcast North America release. So that was that's interesting. Everyone knows I love Sega and the Dreamcast. But Final Fantasy VIII came out, and so since I've dedicated that, I will not play Final Fantasy VII Remake unless it's on that main TV. I can read for hours a day. That does not bother me. I'll sit on the couch and read while someone else is using that TV, but every once in a while I do need a game, and I do need a Final Fantasy. And the Final Fantasy VIII Remaster is only $20 on the Xbox. It's already sitting in the bedroom. Boom, I can still Final Fantasy out back there, and man, I forgot how much I loved that game. It's kind of neat because I told myself that I wouldn't use the cheating quality of life editions they put on this new game, but I have to admit I find myself using them because they're so much fun. I won't bore you. There's tons of stuff on YouTube and podcasts and stuff, I'm sure, to tell you all about Final Fantasy VIII's very quirky, very original, very what I think very cool mechanics. You're gonna hear a lot of people gripe about the draw system. I think the draw system's really cool. It was different. It added a whole new dynamic to the gameplay. It added a sense of urgency and resource planning that I really enjoyed. It reminds me of the Resident Evil 2's ammo. So I mention that all the time, but I just loved that game was about shooting zombies, but you had to, like, if you weren't dodging zombies, you weren't going to make it through it. There was not enough ammo to do that, especially on harder difficulties. So that's I love the draw system. And for those of you that don't know, you do not have magic points in Final Fantasy VIII. You do not have MP. You have a draw system where you'll encounter a draw point in the field or an enemy, and you will select the command draw if you have that equipped to your Guardian Force, and you pull spells out. And let's say you pull 3 fires, you can cast fire 3 times off that. Like, it's literally like a bank of spells, and I'm sorry, I think it's cool, but that's just me. And man, it's really hard to keep your breath when you're the only one talking to the podcast. Never really realized that until now, unless I've mentioned it before, in which case disregard. But so Final Fantasy VIII, and there's probably plenty of people out there defending its system, and that's fine. I'll defend its system till I'm blue in the face. I love the junction system, but we'll have someone else talk to you about that. I just think it's a very neat entry into the series. I would say Final Fantasy VII is probably the one where everyone noticed Sakaguchi taking a back seat the hardest. Sakaguchi, of course, being the legendary director and producer, an absolute legend in game design. But it's I would say 7 was probably his most notable one where he took a back seat, but I think he was really hands-off on 8. I think his only actual, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his only actual credit in it was executive producer. And he, of course, left Square Enix. It might have just been still Squaresoft at that point. I don't know. But it was in 2004. He actually left and formed his own game studio. I can't remember what it was called, but this, of course, was the man who, he was the director of 1 through 5, and he just really left his mark on the series. I mean, he was everyone knows the story. Final Fantasy was, it was their last hope, Squaresoft's last hope in the 80s. If that game failed, they failed. And so he was a legend. And so this game's notable that as he took a back seat, a lot of his signatures are absent from this game. And I think that's what helps it. Huge Sakaguchi stan, if you couldn't tell by the way I was talking about him. But I think Final Fantasy needed to stay fresh. So I'm glad that happened. And again, Final Fantasy is the ultimate for me. You don't get better than Final Fantasy with this guy. Well, except Kingdom Hearts. But a lot of people consider that one series anyway, which I've said before as well. So just all that rolled up into one. I know that's a very that guy thing to say. I know I'm being that guy. But I'm going to defend something that's very much maligned in Final Fantasy VIII that I don't think a lot of people understood, and that was a Squall. Everyone says he just talks with ellipses. And that's not really true. Like, there's a lot to his character. He's annoyed with the world around him. Like, he doesn't put himself out there a lot, and the game has a great reason why. If you would just play the game, you'd get this awesome character development out of him. But it's kind of like Shinji and Evangelion. They don't want to watch the character develop. They just want to make snap judgments about what he's doing in front of their face at that moment. Which the Evangelion one's ridiculous. Like I said in our Evangelion podcast that I did forever ago with Luke last year. It's very reasonable to expect a prepubescent boy or a slightly post-pubescent boy to behave in these ways. And in that series, and Squall is canonically 17 in Final Fantasy VIII, so it makes perfect sense why he's acting this way. Like, he's a teenager and he's a bit angsty, but he's got a really good reason why. And I think that's what upsets me the most about Final Fantasy VIII. You're just missing out on a great game. And I think I love the cast. I love Irving. The scene where Irving can't take the shot on Sorceress Adea, I think that's fantastic. I think that was a beautifully made scene because it foreshadows so well into the big reveal. And of course, the character designs were done by Tetsuya Nomura. And one thing that really stood out for me on Final Fantasy VIII was that the characters look in the field roughly the way they're supposed to look, whereas in all the past Final Fantasy games, they're very spritey, or in the case of 7, extremely polygonal. So, I guess really what I'm trying to say is it's different, but give it a chance. Like, if you see the remaster, give it a chance, because I just think it was really unfortunately maligned. It, of course, is a member of the Nomura trilogy, the big 3 that he was character designer on, 7, 8, and 10. He was notably not the character designer of 9, because 9 was sort of the return to basics for Final Fantasy, which had only been away from its basics arguably for 2 games. But they went so far away. 7 and 8. I mean, just 8 has this sort of like modern / futuristic vibe to it, where 7 was just coldly modern, just very dingy. And then you go into 8, and it's very flashy, very glossy, very futuristic. But wow, that's like Trump. I should have just done that. I should have been Trump talks about how he feels about Final Fantasy VIII. Look, I know the draw system. I was the one that came up with the draw system, and I was the one. I told Sakaguchi, hey, fella, back off. Back off. Let someone else take the reins. That was me. I told them that. So if that's something you want to hear, let me know in the comments that you want me to do Trump impressions, and I just won't do them. But so yeah, and 8, I guess 8, you really just need to embrace the difference in it. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And in the remaster, the quality of life additions, they're I was really against them. I wasn't going to use them. I felt like they were cheating, but man, they come in handy. This is a very grindy game, and there's some times when you just want to get out of you've got all the XP you want. You're really low on supplies. You just want to get out of there. Just turn random battles off. You could do that in this game. You just turn them off in the remaster. Or sometimes you just want to hit like a god mode in battle. There's a battle booster option that just makes it to where like you got limit breaks for days. You got full ATB, stuff like that. And then the other one makes the game go 3 times faster, so those moments when you are grinding just for XP makes it a lot easier. And I think a lot of these older JRPGs, if they get remasters, could stand to have that. Now, that's one side of the coin. I think that's good for introducing new fans. Old fans that just want to experience the narrative again, I think that's very good, but I really appreciate that Dragon Quest XI was just pure, grindy JRPG when it came out. Really thought that was great. I love, everyone who knows me knows I love Yuji Horii almost as much as like Sakaguchi and Nomura in the Final Fantasy gang. Anyway, for those of you that can't quite scratch that Final Fantasy VII Remake itch, maybe you don't have a PlayStation 4, maybe you're in my position where you have it. You actually have the game, you're just not playing it enough. The Final Fantasy VIII Remaster is actually on Steam. I think it's on Switch even. I think you can get it on Switch and the Xbox One. So I would strongly recommend check that out. Please give this ugly duckling of the Final Fantasy franchise a chance. It richly deserves it. Trust me, it really does. Anyway, that's just sort of it's Monday, even if you're on quarantine, it's still Monday, let's kind of ease back into the week, fellas.